I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing with the secure development practice theme over the past year. I don't have contact details, but a colleague of mine once told me that there aren't very many Shamal Faily's on the internet. So if you Google my name, I'm pretty sure you'll figure out how to reach out to me. Um, Embedding security in design techniques and tools is something that has been of interest of mine since I started my DPhil some 12 or so years ago. But I'm also a software developer. I developed software for nearly a decade before my third life in academia, and I've been leading an open source project for over a decade. So I happen to develop and maintain software in addition to the research I do. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay, so this theme is about the practices embodied in advice, guidance, standards, and frameworks for secure software development, which sounds like a real mouthful. We know these prescribed practices are well-meaning, but they're not particularly engaging to developers. And this may well be because not everybody that contributes to the development of software is actually a software developer. And what that means then is that we need to consider what these practices mean for all stakeholders in some secure software development team, particularly those associated with design at all phases, potentially as far left as initial MVP design and ideation. And our ultimate aim is to try and shift enough paradigms that we can make the sort of practices in this theme dominant. Now, for that to happen, any secure development practice innovation has got to have a broad impact. So and we're not going to see any practice change until we see changes in how we deliver education, how we promote a marketplace for products and services that promote secure development practices. Can we get the next slide, please? So to really build our community, we had to figure out what our community actually was. So in the first lockdown last year, we came up with a map of what we thought was a secure development practice capability in higher education within the UK. So I spent a lot of time trawling through websites, trawling through papers from about 114 different higher education institutes that offer computer science and cybersecurity courses to try and find out who is expressing an interest in cybersecurity, but who's also got a recent track record in areas cogent to secure development practices. And we found capability in about 27 of these 114 institutions. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means when I summarize the key messages at the end. But the first step to building this community was to try and get everybody together in one place. So in November, we ran a community workshop to introduce this theme. So we started talking about what works and what doesn't work. We had a panel with some of the UK thought leaders in developer centre security, and I'm delighted to see some of them in the participant list today. We created a team area where we kept recordings of talks and Padlets that we used to come up with ideas. So if anybody wasn't at that workshop, but they want access to that material and want to join our community, then if you reach out to me, I can get you added. But we also ran some breakout discussions on barriers and opportunities and open problems as well to see if these confirm some hypotheses that we had going into this fellowship and see if there's something new that we can discover that we didn't already know. Now, what's great about what we've done so far is that we've been attracting some early careers researchers, particularly researchers from about 9 different institutions that don't currently have capability. So our hope is that the workshop and the theme more generally is going to inspire contributions to the theme in future. Can we get the next slide, please? So I had to come up with a diagram for the research landscape, and I found that it was less a prairie with big clear skies and more of a mountain with false peaks and not very many sunlit uplands. Now, the good news is that RISCS has been funding some fantastic work in developer-centered security on sensitizing developers to insecurity. But I think our next step is to sensitize development teams to things like threat models that exploit this insecurity and different design techniques that are sensitized to security. But this isn't expertise that developers on their own are going to have. So we need to exploit the distributed expertise that's already out there. And this means addressing some challenges around what has been called asymmetry of knowledge, but some folks have also called the symmetry of ignorance. How do we get expertise in people's heads and use all that expertise towards the end of making software more secure? This is an area of long-standing interest in HCI and computer-supported collaborative work. So I think there are opportunities to encapsulate what we know there into secure development practices. But I think there are also opportunities where there is a need for assurance. So when certifying or accrediting some system, because there should already be some of the culture that secure development practice should be adopting. But we also have some very interesting tensions that lead to interesting research problems as well. So many of you will be aware of the need for contact tracing for COVID-19. Now, before COVID-19 was actually in everyday vernacular, people were thinking about tensions between security and safety. And now all of a sudden, we've got a tension with privacy as well, which is of equal value to security, to security and safety. And if we're going to get a handle of these problems, we need to challenge some of the assumptions that early stage design artifacts are intractable and not amenable to evaluation using tooling and automation that we see later in the development lifecycle. Can we get the next slide, please? To give you some examples of that, I want to point you out to some work that we've published during the life of this fellowship. So on the left, we've got a figure from a paper a few of us wrote on contextualizing data flow diagrams for general security analysis. So we've shown how we can get artifacts from user experience that can provide context to other models, and with tool support, identify usability problems that effectively taint information flows in threat models. So these models can be worked on by different teams at different times, and we can see how tooling can literally reason across all these models and spot hidden design problems. Towards the end of last year, we also published a paper at SecPre that looked at automating the visualization of personas, a very common user experience artifact, as a social goal model, to simulate how changes to tasks and task performance could actually obstruct user goals, which could in turn lead to implicit vulnerabilities that could get exploited in different threat models. Now, what this work is showing us is that usability artifacts contribute to the broader assurance of system, but also shows us what tooling actually looks like at early, pre-MVP design as well. So it gives some people an idea, if you're in the market to do work in tooling and automation, or if you're interested in things like DevSecOps, as to what this tooling might look like. Can we get the next slide, please? So I've got two key messages to take away before I hand back to the panel. The first is that secure development practice is not exclusively a software engineering problem. So long-standing problems eliciting security requirements have been looked at by the software engineering community for a while, but I don't think the solution is going to be within the software engineering community. And there are contributions that can be made from other areas of computer science and even outside computing to address this problem. So how can we harness knowledge from these areas a bit more effectively? My second key message is the role of secure development practices in the cyber skills pipeline. So one of the things we found from our capability mapping exercise is that not only is the capability mapping in general, it's raising the question about how we get security conscious software development grads down the cyber skills pipeline. Because the thing is, this is a silent problem. Because if developers and teams don't know what they don't know, how are we going to get any sort of innovation in change of practices? Now, also, we need to account for the fact that we've got graduates of non-degree programs, people from further education programs that are getting into the space. We have grads from non-STEM degrees, people that have done a first degree in a humanity or a social science that are getting into cybersecurity. And these folks have got an important role to play in the design of software as well. And this is something I feel we need to urgently get a grip on if we're going to make sure that the cyber skill supply meets the demand. Can I get the final slide, please? So before I finish, I just want to say that if this is a community of interest to you, please reach out with your ideas. No idea is too bonkers, I assure you. We are planning some community workshops over the next year. Please do come along and participate and add your voice. Thank you.